Welcome to Behind the Story. I'm your host, Colleen Dulle. Pope Francis's new encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, came out on October 4th, the feast of St. Francis. This document stresses that all people are part of one family, hence the name Fratelli Tutti. In the document, the Pope takes aim at both populism and liberal capitalism. He says, "The marketplace by itself cannot resolve every problem, however much we are asked to believe this dogma of neoliberal faith." So pretty strong words from the Pope. Joining me today to discuss the economic aspect of this new encyclical is Nathan Schneider. Professor Schneider teaches media theory at the University of Colorado in Boulder and is a contributor to America Magazine, where he covers a wide range of topics, including innovation and economics. Welcome to Behind the Story, Nate.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Good to have you. So we've both read Fratelli Tutti by now, but for those who haven't, could you quickly summarize what Francis's main economic points are?
Yeah, I mean, these are very familiar ideas from his teachings in the past. You know, a core doctrine here that he's emphasizing, that he alluded to, for instance, in Laudato Si and elsewhere, is the universal destination of goods. This is kind of the underlying old doctrinal teaching that lurks behind a lot of the other stuff he's saying about, the particular policies of our world. And this is the idea that ultimately all things of the world are given to everyone. And that, of course, the second move, it's kind of a three-phase doctrine, right? The first is that everything is everyone's. The second is, but actually, in the context of the fall, we do have to practice some kind of private property. But phase three is, if you're going to practice private property, you have to act as if and hold that recognition in you that everything is ultimately everyone's, and that should affect your behavior.
Right. You mentioned that a lot of this was mentioned in Laudato Si before. It came out in maybe a more forceful and specific policy-wise way in this document in Fratelli Tutti. But the other thing that came out in Laudato Si was that this is really a doctrine based in creation, right? It's the idea that God created the earth for everyone, for every human, and so we don't really have the right to deny it to certain humans, right? And I saw some people getting excited, kind of calling this, some kind of eco-communism or something. I personally have a hard time when talking about Pope Francis placing his economic ideas into any ism. But I wonder what your read on this is. Francis lays out this kind of vision, but what does it look like if we were to put it into practice? Does it line up with any sort of economic theory that we already have, or is it something new?
I think in the spirit of Catholic social encyclicals going back to Rerum Novarum in 1891, a kind of founding document from Pope Leo XIII of Catholic social teaching, he's looking for another way. He's not looking to just endorse a particular economic theme or philosophy, but is trying to find a thread that connects really what everybody's looking for. And one thing that really struck me as the difference here with Laudato Si, which was I think a really prophetic document. It was a demand. It was an incredibly moving and forceful encyclical. This one, really, the emphasis is bridge building. He talks about bridges over and over and over in this document, and I think what he's calling for, above all, is not this policy needs to be embraced and everybody who opposes it needs to get out of the way, which sometimes Catholic teaching has done. In this one, he is really emphasizing we need to embrace the vocation of building bridges. As Catholics, our job should not be to deepen the culture wars. This is a moment where we need to find common ground, where we are in real danger. And I think the economic aspects of this, as well as the parts about immigration, the parts about media, all of these kind of center around this recognition that this is not the time for bowling each other over with who's right. This is a time for recognizing what is it that we actually share.
When we talk about that bridge building, I do wonder, like reading this as, a person in the United States, right, this immensely powerful country, what is the call to action for regular, American Catholics, who are mostly the people watching this video as well, when it comes to the economics of this? Because I think that it would be easy to read this as a call to just greater philanthropy. And I know that you've written about this in the Pages of America. You don't think that philanthropy is the solution to our unjust systems, right? So what are regular folks supposed to do in light of this document?
Well, the universal destination of goods idea, is centered on this assumption that what you get is not really ultimately yours. And the way we tend to practice philanthropy today, is one in which the donor has total control. Or the way we talk about politics, economy and politics, is one in which who gets what. How do we distinct, and who's resentful toward others about getting something? And he's really trying to reframe this with this concept of, he's got a few concepts here: this social friendship, this political love. All of these are about saying, whoa, 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 be careful about overstating interests. And this is something that both the right and the left are really emphasizing right now.
I want to talk to you about the implications for migration in this, because Francis also makes this link between the universal destination of goods and kind of the destination of land, I guess you could say. He says that if somebody isn't able to live with dignity in the place where they're born, then we kind of have an obligation to allow them to go somewhere where they can live with dignity. We don't have the right to deny them that. And I wonder, you wrote a piece for America called "The Catholic Case for Open Borders" earlier this year. I wonder, do you see this document as calling for open borders?
I think he calls for something, actually very similar to, what I was exploring in that article, which, is not an accident. We're both drawing from the same tradition here, and it points in some pretty clear directions, which is a kind of inversion of what we currently have, which is a world in which money flows freely and people are highly restricted. Culture flows very freely, which means that very powerful cultures like, that of Hollywood in the United States is able to impose its will on the cultural resources of other societies. And what he's calling for is to turn that upside down. If people need to move in order to survive, they're probably not doing that unless they really need to. And we need to make sure that that right to move is protected. On the other hand, we need to be much less permissive of the free flow of exploitative forces of capital and culture, and make sure that even if people are flowing freely, local communities still have the power to shape their own destiny and to protect their native cultures. And that's a really important. It doesn't mean that you just throw away all boundaries and all borders. It's that you rethink what borders are for in a fundamental way and center again the person as the core of the question rather than these abstract goods.
Right. Yeah. What he said about the cultural impact of globalization on local communities. He talked about it. These local communities lose their local flavor, right, when they feel like they have to assimilate into a kind of monoculture that gets imposed by wealthy nations that are exporting their culture along with their capital, right? And I feel like that ties into the last thing I wanted to ask you about, which is media. Francis spoke very strongly and pretty. It was a strong indictment of the way that media divides our world right now, and also the way that media imposes a kind of divided culture on the world. And I was wondering, as a media theorist, what do you make of what he had to say about media and social media, especially?
Well, it was really striking to see. This is probably the strongest statement on this topic, and it's a very critical one. I mean, in the past, a lot of Vatican statements on media have been kind of like, we need to kind of start tweeting a little more and evangelizing in these spaces. And here he's really emphasizing, look, we cannot trust these tools to be neutral. Conveyances, and that is so welcome, honestly, because I think that's been missing from the Catholic discourse on media, and to recognize and actually that's a lot of the great theorists of media have been coming out of Catholic tradition for decades. So it's been surprising not to see some more of that from the Vatican. But here we're seeing this really strong um, uh, uh, repudiation of essentially Facebook's claim that by building technology, we are connecting the world. And instead, Francis insists that no, what connects the world is how we behave, regardless of the technology. We can't rely on the technology to connect us in positive ways. And that's where this concept of friendship comes in. Francis is calling us, whatever tools we're using, to actively enter into relationship, change how we do our relationship building. Maybe that also means changing what kinds of technologies we're using, what kinds of incentives are behind those technologies. But above all, in a moment of such profound polarization and such conflict, he's saying, where can you create, transformative friendships? And that, to me, is the ultimate call of this encyclical. Everything else, I think, is subsidiary to that. And especially as we're entering this election, we need to take that call seriously. How can we enter radical friendships in a moment of such profound division? Friendships that will enable us to see what we actually do and can hold in common.
Nathan, I want to ask you, you spent a lot of time studying the social teaching tradition of the church, and I wonder where you see this document fitting into that. Do you think this is going to be like a rerum novarum, right? Something that people keep coming back to? Or do you think that it's, just kind of something for this moment and then we'll move on from it?
It's so hard to know in the moment. When I read this, I've got to be honest, it felt very different again from Laudato Si, which felt to me like this is, it just felt like history in the making in this significant way. This current document, Fratelli Tutti, to me speaks much more intimately to where we are right now, and it channels longstanding concerns of Catholic teaching, and speaks to our moment, and hones those concerns for the moment. I mean, there are many things that he comes out saying more stridently than we've seen before in many cases around the death penalty, around migration, around war, and really significantly. The confrontation of the just war doctrine there is immense, but above all, the core of this document, I think, is really for the precipice that we're at right now. He's recognizing that we are in a moment of crisis, and we need a very serious reminder, to remember that we are a common people made by one God, who share a common world, and we need to start acting like it. And everything else, I think, falls out from there.
Yeah, that's a reminder that I think, it's very obvious that we need during this historic moment too, and this moment of, almost unprecedented divisions in our world. Nathan, I want to say thanks for coming on the show today. Thanks for taking some time to talk through the new document with me. For more coverage of the Pope's document, Fratelli Tutti, including podcasts, videos, and articles by experts from around the world, visit americamagazine.org. And for more videos like this, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/americamag. For American Media with Nathan Schneider, I'm Colleen Dulle. We'll see you next time.